My name is Michael, and I was Carrie Bankes' immediate next door neighbor for 12 years. I'm also the founder and managing director of Fora. Carrie was the inspiration behind Fora, and she helped Fora every step of the way. She did many things behind the scenes, including creating the logo that is on that internet thing that you see. I don't know what that's called. And but she did other things as well. She sponsored 6 refugees herself. They were Rohingya refugees. You can imagine, these are refugees whose villages were burnt to the ground. The women and children were raped. Many of the families were killed. They fled across borders. They spent 12 years in detainment camps that were the worst detainment camps in the world, as determined by the UN. And then they were told they were going to the United States, which they were Muslim, and they all saw on television that the United States was the center of Islamophobia in the world. They got on the plane with their little kids. They spent 30 hours and 3 stops getting here. They took their life's belongings in their hands with their kids underneath their arms, getting off the plane in O'Hare, and who do they see but Carrie Bankes. These people knew very quickly that for once in their lives they had hit the jackpot. And we too, as friends of Carrie, we hit the jackpot as well. In rabbinic literature, there is a mystical belief that there are 36 truly good people, good and righteous people on earth, who, but for their goodness, but for their righteousness, the world would devolve into chaos and would end. And these people were not famous, are not famous. That's the rule. They are ordinary people doing ordinary things, living their ordinary lives, but they live their ordinary lives doing ordinary things in such a way that is imbued with meaning, with goodness, and with humility. The other thing is that these 36 people themselves do not know that they are among the 36, because they themselves are so humble that they would never think of themselves as such. But truly, these 36 put the breath in the rest of us. If you don't believe this, that's fine, but I ask you to suspend your disbelief just for a moment and think about, what if this were true? And what if the United Nations discovered who these unsung superheroes were? And they decided that they were going to announce who these 36 people were at the Super Bowl Sunday at halftime. And everybody around the world wanted to know who these 36 people were. Everyone, 700 blocks of Northfield, were all gathered in front of the television. 740 were not playing football at halftime show. And 35 people are announced, and it gets to the 36. And Brad Pitt steps up to the mic. My wife says I look like Brad Pitt. She's face blind. That's true. And Brad Pitt says, and the 36th and last superhero is Carrie Bankes. Everybody on the street would just go nuts. We'd be running around the street like that squirrel was many years ago during a block party who had rabies, and Justin finally ran him over. He was running in circles. All the kids saw the death of the squirrel was there. Steve Banks would be standing at the curve talking about in 5 volumes the history of the curve. Joe Raschke would be hawking t-shirts, and Kurt would be on QVC with an unauthorized version of some sort of beef turkey fryer that he says that Carrie has endorsed, but she's not. Carrie, meanwhile, of course, where is Carrie? Carrie is in the living room, looking out and saying, "Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness, when will Steve come in? And when will everyone just please go away?" Carrie loved the Jewish religion. She loved celebrating its holidays fiercely and joyfully, especially at Barb and Chuck's house. And she loved the fact that the Jewish religion could balance both rationality and mysticism. And I was at the curb once, and somebody came up to the curb, and they said to Carrie, why do you celebrate the Jewish holidays like you do? You're not Jewish. You're Unitarian. I don't quite know what that means, but you are. And Carrie said very pointedly and kindly, and this is what she said. I was there. She said, life is short, and I find in religions what I can celebrate, and I celebrate that. And what Carrie said about religions, I think she also actually did about people. She found in people what was worthy of being celebrated, and she celebrated that. And I can't imagine any other way that she was friends with all the hooligans and heathens on the 700 block of York Road than that. I've always been in awe of Carrie Bankes. And awe is, honestly, I thought a lot about this. Awe is the right word. Awe means a reverent respect mixed a bit with fear. And great wonder. And what I was most in awe about Carrie was honestly her brain. And I know it's strange at a eulogy to talk about a brain. It's especially strange at a eulogy when the mishap in her brain is what caused her to die a third of her life too soon. But the brain it is, she had an amazing brain. And she could see things that I will never see. People talk about left brain people and right brain people. And Carrie was a whole brain person. She was the wholest whole brain person that I ever met. On one side, she was very logical, she was orderly, she was analytical, and she had a deeply critical insight on issues. And on the other side, she was artistic, she was creative, she was free thinking, and she could see the big picture. And Carrie, I'm sure there's other people in the world like this, but she's the only one that I've met in this regard that, has such a combination of these gifts that are cross-cutting, that she was the best person that I've ever met who could take care of other people. And she could do so because she could quickly analyze the situation at hand. She did not panic, she was calm, she was efficient, she got the job done. But on the other hand, Carrie could always see the bigger picture. The pain, the loss of the past, but also, fears and hope for the future. And it's why she also was a great welcomer. She understood the practicalities, but she also understood the baggage and the hopes that people carried. She welcomed people so well to our neighborhood. She welcomed refugees to the United States, and she was also a great person who helped people depart. Whether it's from our neighborhood, there was a reverend who was leaving, and she was going to hold a dinner for him the week that she died, and she couldn't. But also in the departure of her mother. I have never seen a team of people better than Carrie and Jen helping their mother depart in the final year of her life. 150. It's a number. It's called Dunbar's number. Robin Dunbar, was an Oxford anthropologist who in the early 1990s said that the neocortex of humans could not fathom more than 150 relationships at a time. You couldn't have more than 150 friends at a time. You could not care for 150 people at a time. It just overwhelmed the human brain. And people bought this hook, line, and sinker, and this was the established scientific truth for 31 years. Except for people who knew Carrie Bankes. Carrie Bankes cared for so many more than 150 people at a time. Hundreds, 400, 500, I would just be guessing. But for those who don't know Carrie Bankes, thank goodness science finally got it right. May 11th of this year, the New York Times, a deep research by Swedish investigators was unveiled. They said, no, Dunbar's number is just hogwash. That in fact, the neocortex can juggle, can focus on up to more than 1,000 people at a time. But what it takes, and this was the researcher said, is extreme effort and extreme focus. And that is what Carrie Bankes had. When you were in front of Carrie Bankes, she only focused on you. She wasn't worried about anything going around her. When she was gardening, she was gardening. When she was partying, she was partying. When she was retreating into the house, she was retreating into the house. And when she was caring for other people, she was fully present, caring for those people. And that's how she could remember the needs, the cares, the desires, the wants, the joys of so many. Meanwhile, my brain doesn't work so well. I can't even remember people's names very well. I've come up with something that's recommended where you focus on the characteristic that is most noticeable about the person. I can imagine the day when I forget my own name and I've come up with a rhyme. An apple is red that I like, red is the face of Red-Faced Mike. And I repeat that to myself, just in case I forget. But with Carrie, I'm not going to tell you what all your names are and your poems. But with Carrie, I didn't have to create a poem or a rhyme. The first few days meeting Carrie Bankes, it was extraordinary. She was so caring for all of us. And I can share with you those stories some other time, but it was just so easy. I dropped the R and the I out of her name, and it's spelled care. And you have to focus on an attribute, so I had to make that real. So in beautiful cursive, in my mind's eye, I wrote care, C-A-R-E, on Carrie's forehead, on Carrie's brain. And every single time I saw Carrie Bankes and she smiled at me, I saw that name, Care. She was so caring. And it's amazing when I would spell C-A-R-E, 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 it actually sounds like Carrie. It was just so easy and so simple. I love the name Carrie Bankes. I never called her Carrie. I saw her more than 3,000 times to greet her over the past 16 or so years. And every single time, I didn't say hi, I didn't say hi Carrie, I didn't say Carrie. I just said Carrie Bankes. And she would say, Michael O'Connor. And the brain is a funny thing, I don't understand it, but I would see her smile, and I would see the care, and I would hear myself saying the name, and the name, Carrie Bankes, gives me so much pleasure. And I'm so sad that I will never see her again. I know she is gone, and I know she's not coming back. And in the middle of summer, it just feels like the dead of winter. Like everything is withering and dying. And inside myself, I just feel dead. But in the rabbinic tradition of the 36, when one of the 36 die, somehow, mystically, somebody else rises. Somebody who is good and righteous actually steps in the gap of that person. I cannot imagine somebody filling the gap of Carrie Bankes, but right now she demands it. She demands that somebody fill that gap. And we will never know who it is. We don't know who. It may be you. It may be me. But we all have to try. We have to try hard to be good on the big things, but also to be good on the small things, to be righteous on the big things, but also on the very small things. And just to live your life humbly
which is what Carrie did all the time. She did not know that she was one of the 36. But if this story is true, she had to be. I believe this. Who else here but Carrie Bankes would be one of the 36?
Nobody.
Nobody. None of us would be that 36. It was Carrie Bankes. And she just wants us to live a good and kind and helpful and caring life. I'm going to be really presumptuous here in concluding, and I'm going to say what I think Carrie would want me to say. Carrie would not want me to say all the rest of it. Too dramatic. Carrie was not one for prolonged grieving. So do not grieve for too long. Remember that in the deepest winters, Carrie was always looking right around the corner to spring. In fact, she had a game she played with her own children. That in the dead of winter, she would tell her kids to start looking for the first robin to be spotted. In the Midwest, that's the first sign of spring. And she would reward the first spot with the first robin to one of her kids with a big prize. Will, Julia, and Abby, I want to say your mother was truly fulfilled in being your mother. Her life was cut short, but she would not have traded it for any other. You provided her with lifetimes upon lifetimes of happiness and satisfaction at a job very well done. Expect to find joys in your lives and search for the robins amidst the desolation of this winter and prepare for the springtime ahead. To Carrie Bankes, the best of the sorry lot.